Orion Prime was the jewel of the Cerathian Empire, a world of shining towers and silver skies. Its capital stretched across crystal plains guarded by massive energy walls that had never fallen in thousands of years. The Cerathians were proud beings, tall and graceful, their minds trained in art, diplomacy, and advanced sciences. They considered themselves above all other races. To them, humans were rough, emotional, and simple. When the Krell fleet arrived, the Empire's arrogance met its first true test. The sky over Orion Prime turned red with fire as the enemy ships descended. The Krell were not a race of honor. They were a swarm of destruction, spreading across the stars like a living storm. They tore through orbiting defenses in minutes and then rained fire upon the city below. Among the defenders on the ground was Milan, a human combat engineer assigned to a mixed Cerathian unit. Humans were a small part of the Empire's auxiliary forces, valued mostly for labor and simple ground support. The Cerathian soldiers rarely spoke to him unless giving orders. To them, Milan was just another human technician, useful but replaceable. When the first explosions hit the outer wall, Milan was in the lower defense sector, fixing a damaged energy relay. The ground shook under his boots and his headset filled with shouts. The Cerathian captain ordered an evacuation toward the palace district. Milan looked at the flashing sensors and realized that the outer wall's core was going to collapse. If it fell, the enemy would pour straight into the heart of the city. He called out to warn the captain, but the officer ignored him, retreating with the rest of the unit. Milan cursed under his breath and ran toward the power core himself. Smoke filled the air as buildings crumbled. The sound of energy blasts and alien screeches echoed through the ruins. He reached the relay station and saw the problem. A main conduit had melted. He ripped open a toolkit and began working fast. Minutes later, several Cerathian soldiers came running back, pursued by a group of Krell drones. The drones were tall insect-like machines with glowing blue eyes and sharp limbs. Milan ducked behind a metal beam and grabbed his rifle. He fired short bursts to draw their attention while the Cerathians regrouped. One of them shouted that the human was insane for staying out in the open, but Milan only focused on the fight. Using his engineering knowledge, he overloaded a nearby generator. The surge exploded in a bright flash, vaporizing the attacking drones. The surviving Cerathians looked at him with shock. The explosion stabilized the power grid just long enough for the energy walls to reset. The outer gate held for a few more hours, giving the civilians time to escape deeper into the city. But the Krell were relentless. By evening, their larger ground beasts broke through. The defenders fell back toward the palace. Milan followed the retreat, his uniform torn, his armor scorched. The streets were filled with fire and dust. Giant Cerathian statues lay broken on the ground, their faces cracked by plasma fire. As Milan moved through the chaos, he noticed a group of civilians trapped under a collapsed transport vehicle. Without waiting for orders, he ran to help them. The civilians were Cerathians, nobles and workers alike, terrified and injured. He used a broken steel beam as leverage, freeing the survivors one by one. While pulling the last child out, he saw a small crest on the boy's robe. It was the royal emblem of the House of Soraya, the ruling bloodline. His heart pounded. If a child of the royal house was here, then something terrible had happened. Milan followed the boy's frightened pointing. The royal palace stood in the distance, half of it already burning. The golden towers that once symbolized Cerathian pride were crumbling under heavy bombardment. Against the glow of fire, Krell dropships landed directly in the palace courtyard. Ignoring the orders to regroup at the command center, Milan sprinted toward the palace. He knew it was madness for a single human to run into the heart of an alien invasion, but he also knew that if the royal family was captured or killed, the entire empire would collapse. Inside the palace grounds, the fighting was brutal. The royal guards were outnumbered and disoriented. Their advanced plasma rifles were powerful but drained quickly, and their discipline broke under the endless swarm. Milan grabbed a fallen guard's shield emitter and activated it. The shimmering blue field surrounded him as he pushed forward through falling debris. He saw a small group of survivors near the main hall, an elderly royal advisor, 2 wounded guards, and a young woman in a torn ceremonial robe. Her silver hair and crown mark left no doubt. She was Princess Alira, the queen's only daughter. The group was pinned under rubble, and the Krell were closing in fast. Milan shouted for the princess to stay low and ran toward them. A drone fired at him. the blast hitting his shield and throwing him back. Pain shot through his body, but he forced himself up. He used his rifle's last charge to take down the drone, then switched to his sidearm. Moving quickly, he reached the trapped princess and began pulling away pieces of broken marble. The princess looked at him in shock. "You are human," she said in disbelief. Milan only grinned. "Yes, ma'am. And humans don't leave people behind." Using a metal rod as leverage, he freed the last piece of rubble, holding her down. The guards tried to stand, but their injuries were too severe. Milan helped the princess to her feet and led her toward a side corridor. Behind them, the Krell broke through the wall. Energy fire filled the air, lighting the corridors with blue flashes. Milan threw a grenade down the hall and pulled Alira into a maintenance shaft. The blast collapsed the passage, blocking their pursuers. The princess trembled as they moved through the narrow tunnels. She had never seen war this close. The Empire had always fought its battles far from home. Now its heart was burning. After an hour of crawling through smoke and heat, they reached the underground transport bay. A handful of palace workers were trying to start an evacuation shuttle, but the power systems were damaged. Milan quickly took over. His hands moved fast as he reconnected wires and rerouted power manually. The workers watched in amazement as the engines roared back to life. Before boarding, Milan turned to the princess. "You must go now. The Krell will find this place soon." She looked at him with wide eyes. "And you? Will you not come with us?" He shook his head. "Someone has to hold them back long enough for you to escape. That's what I'm good at." The princess wanted to argue, but there was no time. Krell drones were already breaking through the far door. Milan handed her a data chip containing the last defense codes he had copied earlier. "Give this to your mother. It will help the fleet reorganize." As the shuttle lifted off, Milan stood at the entrance with his rifle ready. He watched the craft disappear into the smoky sky, carrying the last heir of the Sarathian royal line. Then he turned to face the approaching swarm. His body ached, his ammo was low, and the walls around him burned, but there was no fear in his heart. He thought of the people who had escaped because of him. He thought of the princess alive because he acted. For a simple human engineer, that was enough reason to fight. He set up explosives along the corridor, creating a trap. When the Krell entered, the entire section exploded, collapsing the tunnel. Milan fell to his knees, exhausted and half buried in debris. His vision blurred as the firelight flickered. Before losing consciousness, he saw one last thing: the royal shuttle breaking through the clouds above, escaping into the stars. A faint smile crossed his face. The royal line was safe, and humanity had played its part in saving an empire. The night over Orion Prime burned, but amid the destruction, one human's courage had changed the course of history. The ruins of Orion Prime burned under the light of its dying suns. What was once a city of beauty and pride had turned into a field of smoke and silence. The Krell swarm moved like shadows through the broken streets, hunting down any signs of life. Beneath the destruction, in the lower tunnels of the old metro system, a small group of survivors gathered. There were Sarathian soldiers, engineers, and civilians. Among them lay Milan, half-conscious, covered in dust and blood. His uniform was torn and one of his legs was injured by falling debris. Two Sarathian medics carried him to a safe corner. One of them, a young officer named Ren, had seen him fight during the palace fall. He had thought humans were weak and emotional, but that night, he had watched Milan do what no Sarathian dared to do: stand alone against a swarm. When Milan opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was the dull glow of a broken light panel above him. His ears still rang from the last explosion he had triggered. He tried to sit up, but the pain in his leg made him stop. Ren pushed him back gently. "Stay still, human," Ren said in a tired voice. "You are lucky to be alive. The princess made it to the fleet thanks to you." Milan blinked. "She is safe?" Ren nodded. "Her shuttle reached the royal ship an hour before the main fleet withdrew. The queen knows what you did." Hearing that brought a strange calm to Milan. The pain in his body was sharp, but his heart felt lighter. He had done what he came to do. Yet as he looked around the dark tunnel, he saw fear in every Sarathian face. They were waiting for death, trapped below the ground, surrounded by enemies. "How many of us are left?" he asked. "Less than 100, Ren said. "We lost contact with command. We have food for one day. The Krell control everything above us." Milan closed his eyes and took a slow breath. "Then we don't wait. We fight our way out before they find us," Ren frowned. "Fight? We are soldiers, not fools. We have wounded and no ships left. Milan looked at the map glowing on a cracked holoscreen. There are maintenance tunnels leading to the river trench. If we move at night, we can reach the old power grid. There's a transmission node there. We can signal the fleet. The Sarathians exchanged uncertain glances. For years, they had relied on perfect technology and flawless plans. Now they had neither. Yet the human's voice carried quiet strength. He did not sound desperate. He sounded sure. Finally, Ren gave a small nod. Then we follow your plan, human. Hours passed as Milan and the survivors prepared. He checked every weapon and rigged makeshift traps using broken energy cells. He instructed the engineers to gather any working drones to use as scouts. His hands moved quickly, guided by experience from countless battlefields humans had fought before joining the Sarathian alliance. When night fell, they moved. The tunnels were cold and silent, filled with dripping water and the hum of distant machines. The group advanced slowly, weapons ready. Milan walked at the front with Ren and another soldier named Taran. Every few steps the ground trembled. The Krell were searching the lower levels. Their machines scanned for heat and sound. Milan ordered everyone to stop whenever they heard movement above. They waited in silence, hearts pounding as alien shapes passed by the vents. After hours of slow movement, they reached the old power grid. The walls were covered in vines of broken cables, and the air smelled of rust. Milan found the transmission node exactly where he expected, but its power core was shattered. He knelt beside it and began working with his tools. I can reroute power from the backup lines. It will take time. Ren stood guard, his rifle glowing softly in the dark. We will hold them off. Do what you must. The sound of gunfire came sooner than anyone hoped. The Krell had found the trail. Dozens of drones crawled through the tunnels, their claws clanging on the steel floor. The Sarathians opened fire, their energy blasts lighting up the darkness. The echoes shook the walls. Milan kept working, sweat running down his face. His hands were steady, even as explosions roared behind him. He connected the last wire, and the node came to life with a spark. The old antenna outside the grid station flickered as power flowed through. He activated the emergency beacon. Signal is up, he shouted. Fleet can hear us now. Ren gave a sharp nod, but before he could reply, a massive Krell beast broke through the wall. It was taller than a tank, covered in metallic armor and glowing veins. The soldiers panicked as it roared, smashing through their defenses. Milan grabbed a charge pack and ran toward it. Keep firing, he yelled. He climbed a fallen pipe and jumped onto the creature's back. It thrashed violently, throwing sparks everywhere. Milan jammed the charge pack into a vent on its shell and rolled away. The explosion tore through the beast, dropping it to the ground. The victory was short-lived. More drones poured in. The Sarathians fell back, dragging their wounded. Milan limped to the entrance and used his last explosive to collapse the tunnel behind them. When the dust settled, silence returned. Only 30 soldiers remained standing. Their faces were tired, but their eyes held new fire. Ren approached Milan, his armor scorched. You are mad, human. But your madness saved us again. Milan gave a faint smile. Madness is just courage with bad timing. The signal reached the Sarathian fleet orbiting the planet. Within an hour, rescue ships began descending. But as they arrived, the Krell launched one last assault, targeting the river trench. The survivors ran toward the extraction point, fighting every step. Plasma fire lit the sky as the rescue shuttles landed. Milan carried a wounded soldier on his shoulder, refusing to stop even when his leg bled again. He threw the man into a shuttle just as another blast hit nearby. A collapsing beam came down toward the group. Milan pushed Ren aside and took the hit himself. The beam crushed part of his armor and pinned him to the ground. Ren tried to lift it, but Milan stopped him. Get them out, he said. That's an order. Ren hesitated. We do not take orders from humans. Milan looked at him firmly. Then take it from a soldier who wants you to live. Ren's eyes burned with respect. He saluted once, then climbed aboard the last shuttle. Milan watched the ships rise into the smoke-filled sky, carrying the last Sarathian survivors. The roar of engines faded into the distance, leaving only the sound of fire and wind. He was alone again. The Krell were closing in, their shadows growing larger. Milan looked at the broken city one last time. His strength was fading, but his will remained sharp. He crawled toward a fallen console and armed the remaining charges. He spoke softly to himself. If they want this world, they'll have to take it piece by piece. When the Krell reached the power station, the floor erupted in flames. The explosion shook the entire district, collapsing half of the tunnels. High above in orbit, the Queen's flagship detected the massive detonation. The officer at her side turned to her. "Your Majesty, the human engineer is still down there. His beacon has stopped transmitting." Queen Soraya's golden eyes softened. She stood silently for a moment before speaking. "He gave his life so that my daughter could live. His courage will not be forgotten." The fleet withdrew from the dying world, carrying the survivors to safety. None of them knew that beneath the ruins, Milan was still alive. Buried under metal and dust, his breathing shallow, but his heart still beating. As dawn broke over the ashes of Orion Prime, the legend of a single human who stood against a swarm began to spread among the rescued soldiers. They whispered his name with honor. For the first time in Cerathian history, they spoke of a human not as a servant, but as a hero. The last stand of Milan became the spark of a story that would travel across the stars. A story of courage that no empire could ignore. Milan woke to a soft light that felt strange after the endless darkness of the tunnels. For a moment he thought he was dreaming. The air smelled clean, and he could hear a distant hum of engines. He tried to move, but pain ran through his body like fire. When he opened his eyes, he saw a ceiling made of glass and light, and strange machines surrounding his bed. He was in a medical chamber, unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls glowed with gentle energy, and small drones floated quietly, checking his wounds. He looked down and saw that his left leg was covered in smooth metal braces. A thin layer of healing gel covered his burns. A Cerathian healer approached. Her face was calm, her voice smooth. "You are safe now, human. You are aboard the royal fleet. Do not move too much." Milan tried to speak, but his throat was dry. "How long was I out?" 3 days, she said. "You were found under the ruins by a recovery team. The Queen ordered the search herself." Her words hit him harder than the pain. The Queen had ordered a search for him, a human soldier. He could hardly believe it. Later that day, the chamber door opened and everyone inside stopped moving. A tall figure entered, wearing white and gold robes that shimmered in the soft light. It was Queen Soraya of the Cerathian Empire. Her presence filled the room with quiet power. Her eyes were sharp but kind, her expression both strong and sad. Milan tried to sit up, but the healer stopped him. The Queen raised her hand gently. "Let him be," she said. Her voice carried warmth that made even the machines seem silent. She stepped closer to the bed and studied him. "So this is the human who saved my daughter," she said softly.
"I expected someone larger."
"Perhaps someone with armor made of steel. Instead, I find a man made of flesh and scars." Milan managed a small smile. "Steel bends, Your Majesty. Flesh can still stand." The Queen looked at him for a long moment. Then she gave a faint smile of her own.
"Yes, it seems it can." She turned to the healers.
"Leave us." When they bowed and left, she sat beside the bed. "You risked your life to save Princess Alira. You stayed behind while others fled." "Why?" Milan took a slow breath. "Because she needed help. I did what any soldier should do." "Any soldier?" the Queen asked. "Even when that soldier belongs to a race my people have often called inferior." Milan looked straight into her eyes. "Courage doesn't care about rank or race. It only cares about what is right." The Queen's expression softened. "You speak with the heart of a warrior. Few of my kind still do." She stood and walked toward the window. Outside, the vastness of space stretched endlessly. Ships moved in formation, repairing damage from the recent war. "Orion Prime is gone," she said quietly. "The heart of our empire burned because we were not ready to face what we thought was beneath us. My people believed we were perfect. Your actions proved otherwise." She turned back to him. "The royal court has advised me to rebuild and move on. But I cannot ignore what you did. You saved my bloodline. You saved my child. I owe you more than words." Milan shook his head. "I need no reward, Your Majesty." "I only did my duty." The Queen smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but my empire needs a new kind of symbol, one that reminds us of humility and strength. You will not leave us, Milan. From this day, you are the guardian of the royal line." Milan blinked in surprise. "Guardian?" "Yes," she said. "A title of honor. One that belongs only to those who protect the crown at the cost of their life. You will stand beside my daughter and myself as a shield and as a reminder that bravery knows no species." Milan tried to protest. "I am a soldier, not a court guardian." The Queen's tone turned gentle but firm. "You are more than a soldier. You are living proof that humanity has something the Cerathians have forgotten. Heart. Her words carried weight. Milan looked down, unsure how to respond. He had spent years serving quietly under Sarathian command, never expecting recognition. Now the Queen herself was giving him an honor greater than any he had imagined. Later that evening, the news spread across the fleet. A human had been named Guardian of the Royal Line. Some cheered, but many were shocked. The Sarathian nobles gathered in council chambers, arguing among themselves. "This is madness," one noble said. "Humans are reckless. To place one so close to the Queen is an insult to our traditions." Another replied, "Traditions did not save Orion Prime. The human did." While the nobles argued, the Queen remained silent. When they finally asked for her final word, she stood and said, "If our traditions make us blind to courage, then it is not the human who insults us. It is our pride." The council fell silent. Her decision stood. In the days that followed, Milan began to recover. The healers replaced his damaged armor with a new uniform bearing the royal crest. He trained with Sarathian guards, learning their combat styles while teaching them human tactics. At first, they hesitated to spar with him, but after watching his speed and creativity, respect began to grow. Princess Alira visited often. She had been restless since her rescue. The memory of Orion's fall haunted her. When she saw Milan again, her eyes brightened. "You survived," she said softly. "I feared you were gone." "I'm hard to get rid of," he said with a smile. She laughed, a sound that lifted the weight from the air. "My mother has spoken much about you. The nobles are confused, some even angry." "I noticed," Milan said. "They look at me like I'm a mistake." The princess shook her head. "They are afraid. You broke the wall they built around their pride. That makes you dangerous to them," he shrugged. "Then I'll just keep doing what I'm good at, protecting people." Over the next weeks, Milan grew stronger. He trained with the royal guards daily, adapting their energy weapons to his own human techniques. He combined precision and improvisation in a way the Sarathians found fascinating. Under his guidance, the palace defense teams improved quickly, but not everyone welcomed him. Some officers whispered that he had manipulated the Queen's gratitude. Others claimed humans were unworthy of royal trust. Milan ignored the talk and focused on his duties. One night, while inspecting the lower hangars, he noticed something strange: a group of soldiers loading crates onto an unmarked shuttle. When he questioned them, they avoided his eyes. Milan's instincts told him something was wrong. He hid nearby and watched as they opened the crates. Inside were advanced weapons and stolen data chips. He realized they were traitors, loyal to nobles who wanted to remove the Queen. Milan drew his weapon and stepped out. "Drop everything," he ordered. The traitors froze, then attacked. The fight was quick and brutal. Milan disarmed 2 of them, dodged energy blasts, and used his strength to throw another into a wall. When the last soldier reached for the shuttle's controls, Milan fired a warning shot that destroyed the console. Reinforcements arrived moments later and arrested the traitors. When the Queen heard of his actions, she summoned him again. "You stopped an attempt to smuggle weapons to our enemies," she said. "Your instincts saved us from another betrayal." Milan stood at attention. "Just doing my job, Your Majesty." She studied him for a long moment. "Do you understand what your job has become, Milan? You are not just protecting my family. You are rebuilding the faith of a broken empire." He hesitated. "I'm just one man." "One man can change everything," the Queen said quietly. "You already have." That night, as Milan walked through the observation deck, he looked out into the stars. He thought of Earth, far away, and of the countless humans who were still treated as second class across the empire. For the first time, he felt that his actions might change that. The next morning, the Queen held a ceremony in the Grand Hall. The chamber glittered with silver banners and the sound of soft music. When Milan entered, the entire court turned to look. Some eyes held respect, others doubt, but all were fixed on him. Queen Soraya stepped forward and placed a golden emblem on his chest. "Before all who witness, I name you Guardian of the Royal Line. Your courage has restored our hope and reminded us of what honor truly means." The hall filled with applause. Even those who had doubted bowed their heads. The human who had once been ignored now stood as a symbol of strength. As the ceremony ended, the Queen leaned closer and said quietly, "You may not yet understand it, Milan, but today you have changed history. Milan looked around the hall, filled with Sarathians who once would never have stood beside a human. He realized she was right. The war had not just destroyed a world, it had built something new, and it had all begun with one man who refused to walk away. The royal palace had never been so alive yet so tense. After the fall of Orion Prime and the rise of Milan as guardian of the royal line, whispers ran like a river through the halls. Some spoke of him with admiration, while others muttered that a human had no place in Sarathian politics or military command. Milan moved quietly through the corridors, observing the court. He noticed nobles in shimmering robes, their eyes flicking toward him with suspicion and envy. They spoke behind closed doors, their words sharp and cold, but none dared confront him openly while Queen Soraya watched. Princess Alira had grown closer to Milan over the past weeks. She often visited him during his training sessions, asking questions about human life and sharing stories of her own. Milan found her curiosity refreshing, and sometimes he smiled at her enthusiasm. She was no longer just the royal princess. She was a young leader learning to stand in the shadow of loss and responsibility. One morning, as Milan trained a group of palace guards in human combat techniques, a commotion erupted in the court. A delegation of nobles demanded an audience with the queen. Their faces were stern, their hands clenched. "Your Majesty," the lead noble began, "this human's presence is unacceptable. We cannot allow a non-Sarathian to influence your daughter or the affairs of the empire. It sets a dangerous precedent." Queen Soraya's voice echoed in the hall, calm but firm. "This human saved my daughter and the royal line. Without him, none of us would be here. His courage surpasses all notions of tradition. You will show him the respect he has earned." The nobles bristled but remained silent. They had no choice. The queen's authority was absolute, and she had made her decision. Despite the tension in the court, Milan continued his duties. He taught the guards how to combine human tactics with Sarathian technology. They learned to move silently, set traps, and think creatively in battle. At first, the guards were hesitant, but soon their confidence grew. They saw results in their training and respected Milan's knowledge and skill. However, not all threats came from outsiders. Shadows lurked within the palace itself. One night, Milan was inspecting the lower hangars when he noticed unusual activity near the cargo bays. Crates were being moved in secret, and hushed voices carried down the corridors. He hid behind a pillar and observed. A small group of Sarathian officers was attempting to smuggle advanced weapons and stolen data chips. Milan realized immediately that these men were traitors, loyal to nobles who sought to undermine the queen and remove him from his position. Stepping forward, he drew his weapon and shouted, "Stop! You will not move these items." The officers spun, their eyes wide in surprise. "Who dares?" one demanded. "I do," Milan said. "You will surrender now or face the consequences." They attacked, and a battle erupted in the dimly lit hangar. Milan used his training and quick reflexes to dodge energy blasts and disarm opponents. He moved with precision, taking down one officer after another. The last man tried to flee with a data chip, but Milan fired a careful shot that destroyed the controls of the shuttle. Reinforcements arrived shortly after, and the traitors were apprehended. The queen praised Milan's vigilance and skill. "You not only protect my daughter, but also the integrity of this palace. Your instincts are unmatched." Milan remained humble. "I only do what is necessary." As days passed, the palace grew stronger under Milan's guidance. The guards trained harder, the security systems improved, and the royal family felt safer. Yet the whispers in the court never ceased. Some nobles feared that humans would gain too much influence. Others envied Milan's position, resentful that a foreigner could earn the queen's trust so quickly. Despite this, Milan and Princess Alira continued to grow close. She asked him about Earth, his family, and his experiences as a human soldier. Milan told her stories of courage, perseverance, and survival. She listened with fascination, learning that humans often relied on creativity, adaptability, and teamwork, qualities the Sarathians sometimes lacked in battle. One afternoon, as they walked along the observation deck, Alira said, "You have changed how I see the universe. Milan, I always thought humans were fragile, but you've shown me that strength comes in many forms." Milan smiled. "Strength isn't just in size or power. It's in the choices we make, the courage to act when others hesitate." Their conversation was interrupted by alarms. The palace's surveillance system had detected movement near the outer perimeter. Milan rushed to the command center with a small team of guards. A squadron of Krell drones had returned, stronger and faster than before. The humans and Sarathians prepared for combat. Milan coordinated the defense, combining Sarathian energy weapons with human tactics. The palace's walls shook as the drones attacked, but the defenders held their ground. Milan moved through the battlefield, guiding soldiers, setting traps, and inspiring confidence. Despite the intensity of the fight, Milan noticed a pattern in the Krell's attack. They were testing the palace defenses, probing for weaknesses. He realized that if he could anticipate their movements, he could set a trap and stop them entirely. He ordered the guards to fall back to a strategic point near the main gate. Using his knowledge of human engineering, he rigged the area with energy barriers and traps that would disable the drones. When the Krell advanced, they walked right into Milan's plan. The barriers activated and the traps immobilized dozens of drones at once. The remaining Krell retreated, confused and damaged. The palace defenders had won without losing a single life. Milan's strategy proved that a combination of human ingenuity and Sarathian technology could overcome even the most powerful enemies. After the battle, the queen summoned Milan to her chambers. "You have proven yourself again," she said, "not only in courage but also in wisdom. You have taught my people that strength is more than weapons. It is thought, adaptation, and heart." Milan bowed respectfully. "I only act when it is necessary, Your Majesty." She studied him for a moment. "You have earned your place here, Milan. Not as a guest or a soldier, but as a protector and an example. My daughter and my empire depend on your guidance." In the weeks that followed, Milan continued to train the palace forces, improve security systems, and advise the queen on tactical decisions. The nobles slowly began to recognize his value, even if they did not fully accept it. Yet shadows remained. Some officers continued to plot quietly, hoping to find a way to remove the human from power. Milan knew that vigilance was necessary not only against the Krell, but also against those who might betray the empire from within. Despite the challenges, Milan found small moments of peace. He shared meals with Princess Alira, taught guards human games, and watched the stars from the observation deck. In these moments, he realized that he was no longer just a soldier. He had become a symbol of hope, courage, and unity, a bridge between humans and Sarathians. One night, as he stood alone in the quiet corridors, he reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had left Earth as a simple soldier, unremarkable in his own world. Now he was a hero of an alien empire, the guardian of the royal line. The thought was overwhelming, yet it filled him with purpose. He knew that greater challenges lay ahead. The Krell would return, stronger and more determined. The court would continue to watch him with suspicion. But Milan also knew that with courage, intelligence, and loyalty, he could face any threat. He was no longer just human. He was a force that could inspire an entire empire. As dawn broke over the royal fleet, Milan looked out at the stars and whispered to himself, "I will not fail. Not my queen, not her daughter, not this empire." In the shadows of the court, alliances shifted, plots formed, and dangers lingered. But Milan stood ready. He had survived the fall of a world, saved a princess, and earned the respect of a queen. Whatever came next, he would face it with the same courage that had carried him through Orion Prime's final battle. And so the story of the human guardian continued, a story of courage, loyalty, and the quiet power of one individual to change the fate of an empire. The shadows in the court might whisper, but Milan's presence was a light they could not extinguish. The horizon of Orion Prime's orbit was darkened by the massive Krell fleet. Unlike their first attack, this invasion was carefully planned and brutally organized. Ships of immense size moved in formation, firing energy beams that tore through the remaining orbital defenses. The royal fleet, though large, had suffered heavy losses and struggled to hold the line. Queen Soraya stood on the bridge of the flagship, her golden eyes scanning the battlefield. Beside her, Princess Alira watched with concern. The fleet's commanders whispered strategies, but the situation seemed hopeless. The Krell had learned from their previous defeat, and now sought to finish what they had started. Milan walked onto the bridge, his uniform marked by days of constant service and training. His left leg had fully healed, yet the scars of battle were still visible on his arms and face. He carried a calm that contrasted with the tension in the room. "Your Majesty," he said, "the fleet can hold, but we need a plan that the Krell cannot predict. Their tactics are clever, but they underestimate human adaptability." The Queen studied him. "And what do you suggest?" Milan moved to the tactical map. "We use a diversion. We draw their main force toward the outer rim while a small strike team infiltrates the flagship. Once we disable their command core, the rest will falter. The key is speed and surprise. My team can lead the infiltration." A commander scoffed. "A human leading an attack against the Krell flagship? It is too dangerous." Milan did not flinch. "Danger is why it works. They expect the fleet to act predictably. They will not expect a human in the lead." The Queen's gaze softened. "You have earned the right to make this call. Do as you believe is necessary." The strike team was assembled, consisting of Milan, Princess Alira, and a small group of elite Sarathian soldiers trained under his guidance. They boarded a swift attack vessel, designed for speed and stealth rather than brute force. Milan felt the weight of responsibility in every decision he made. He knew that the fate of the royal line and the Empire rested on their success. As they approached the Krell flagship, alarms rang throughout their vessel. Drones and patrol ships swarmed the area, but Milan remained calm. He directed his team to navigate through blind spots in the enemy formation, using both Sarathian technology and human tactics he had adapted for the mission. Inside the Krell flagship, the corridors were dark and filled with the sounds of alien machinery. The strike team moved silently, taking out patrol drones with precision strikes. Milan's leadership was clear. Every move was calculated, every action purposeful. The Sarathian soldiers, who had once doubted him, now followed his instructions without hesitation. At the command core, they encountered the Krell Overlord, a massive creature with armor that seemed impervious to conventional weapons. The battle was fierce. Energy beams tore through the walls, and the floor shook under the weight of the Overlord's attacks. Milan directed the team, using his human intuition to exploit the creature's weak points. He coordinated Sarathian energy blasts with carefully placed charges. With a final, well-timed maneuver, they disabled the Overlord's armor and destroyed the command console. The Krell flagship shuddered violently as control of the fleet faltered. Back in orbit, the royal fleet noticed the change immediately. Without direction, the Krell ships became disorganized, their attacks erratic. Sarathian pilots seized the advantage, striking at the enemy with precision. The tide of battle shifted in favor of the fleet, thanks to Milan's daring mission. When the last Krell ship retreated into the void, the fleet erupted in cheers. The victory was complete, but it had come at a cost. Many brave soldiers had fallen, yet the royal family and their empire survived. Milan returned to the flagship exhausted but unharmed. Princess Alira greeted him first. "You did it," she said, her eyes shining. "We did it." He smiled faintly. "We did it together. Humans alone cannot win wars. Neither can Sarathians alone. But together we are strong." The Queen entered the room, her expression a mixture of relief and pride. "Milan," she said, "you have done more than save my daughter. You have saved our empire. You have shown my people that courage and wisdom do not belong to a single race." Milan bowed his head. "I only did what was necessary, Your Majesty." "You did more than necessary," she said. "You changed the hearts of my people. They now see that humanity has strength, honor, and loyalty equal to any Sarathian. That is a lesson our empire will carry forward." In the following weeks, the royal fleet repaired its damages and the empire began to rebuild. Milan worked alongside engineers and soldiers, strengthening defenses and teaching strategies that combined human innovation with Sarathian technology. The court slowly accepted his presence, and even those who had once whispered against him began to respect his skill and courage. Princess Alira spent time learning from Milan as well. She trained in human tactics and strategies, understanding the value of creativity and adaptability. She often remarked how much she had learned about courage, not just in battle, but in leadership and trust. One evening, the Queen invited Milan to the observation deck. The stars stretched endlessly before them, and the quiet hum of the fleet was calming. "You have done something remarkable," the Queen said softly. "You saved the royal line, and you reminded us all what it means to be truly brave. You are not just a guardian, you are a symbol." Milan looked at the stars. "I never wanted to be a symbol. I only wanted to protect what needed protection. Sometimes that is exactly what a symbol is," she said. "Not a position, not a title, but someone who shows others the way." The human nodded, understanding the truth in her words. He had never sought recognition or reward, yet the choices he had made had inspired an entire empire. The story of Milan's heroism spread across the empire. Humans, once considered inferior, were now seen as capable of bravery and wisdom equal to the Sarathians. Soldiers spoke of his tactics, and civilians told tales of his courage during the fall of Orion Prime. The empire had changed, not because of new laws or decrees, but because one human had shown what was possible. In the grand hall, the Queen addressed her people standing beside Milan and Princess Alira. "Today we celebrate not only a victory over our enemies, but also a lesson learned. Courage and loyalty do not belong to any single race. One human, through his actions, has reminded us that strength comes in many forms. Let us honor him, and let us move forward united, stronger than before." Applause filled the hall. Sarathians and humans alike recognized the truth in her words. Milan, standing quietly at the Queen's side, felt a sense of peace. He had never imagined such a role for himself, yet he had earned it through action, courage, and unwavering loyalty. Later, as the celebrations ended and the hall emptied, Princess Alira approached him. "You changed everything," she said softly. "For me, for the Empire, for everyone." Milan smiled. "I only did what I could. You and your people did the rest." She looked at him with gratitude and respect. "I hope you will stay, not just as my guardian, but as a part of our lives and our future." Milan's gaze drifted to the stars once more. He knew there were more battles ahead, more challenges that the Empire would face. But for now, he had fulfilled a role he never expected to hold. "I will stay," he said quietly, "for as long as I am needed." And so, Milan remained in the Sarathian Empire, not as a servant or an outsider, but as a respected leader, a symbol of courage, and a bridge between worlds. His actions had saved the royal line, strengthened the empire, and inspired a new era of unity between humans and Sarathians. In the quiet moments, he often reflected on the journey that had brought him here, from the rubble of Orion Prime to the bridge of the flagship, from a simple human soldier to the guardian of the royal line. The lessons he had learned and the bonds he had formed would shape the future of the empire for generations. The stars outside the observation deck were calm and infinite. Milan stood beside Queen Soraya and Princess Alira, knowing that humanity's place in the galaxy had changed forever. One human had made a difference, and that difference would echo across time and space. He had saved the royal line. He had earned respect, and he had proven that courage, loyalty, and heart were not limited to any single species. The Empire would never forget the human who changed everything.